Welcome to the Blooming League of Original Podcasts.
Hello and welcome to Talk Musicals to Me, a new theatre podcast about musicals and their impact on people. My name is Caroline Sheen and I'm here to quiz some of the leading creatives in the entertainment industry about their relationship with musical theatre and how certain musicals may have influenced their lives in ways you may not even expect. From how they first encountered a musical to musicals they may never even have seen, let's dive in and introduce today's guest to open up and talk musicals to me. Talking musicals to me today is Richard Darbourne. He is one of the top producers in the West End, working for ATG Productions. I first met Richard through our experience on 9 to 5, the musical, which was kind of a crazy one, to tell you the truth. I joined it very late, and the support that he and Adam Spears, his co-producer on that, gave me was fabulous and has led to a really lovely friendship. He is our first producer on the podcast, so I'm really excited to get his take on musicals and the industry and his experience of them, and his new production of a brand new British musical, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, only went and won the Oliviers for Best New Musical a couple of days ago, along with several others. Very exciting. So, Richard, thank you for finding the time in your award-winning schedule to talk musicals to me.
That's very kind. It's lovely to take this time out, and it's great timing to do it. Listening to that introduction, then we can start with Sunday, because it was it was a complete full circle moment. And by that, I mean, once we had this exhilarating moment, which you're just experiencing it happening because you've deliberately kind of prepped yourself for it. So you're not prepared or you're not expecting it. But then you sort of start to hope once a couple of other awards went our way and you start thinking, blimey, this might happen. And then it does. And then that was followed by this 40th anniversary performance of Tribute to Les Miserables. Just hearing your introduction about musicals that inspire you. I mean, this was just a moment because 30 years previous, in 1995, I was 13, 14, and I had this VHS video of the 10th anniversary concert of Les Miserables at the Royal Albert Hall. And I used to watch that video on repeat. I knew kind of where, you fast forward and rewind, and you know where the minutes are, where sort of the different bits. It's an outstanding thing to watch, by the way, even just as a masterclass of it, with Philip Quast as Javert and Colin Wilkinson and Michael Bawley as Salonga. I mean, it's just watching the intricacies of those performances and power of it. And I was truly captured by that. So on Sunday, as we just had this incredible experience with Button, we walked down the steps and you go into the kind of sort of green room bit to sort of do photos and stuff. And in the backdrop, got Lucy Jones kind of doing I Dreamed a Dream. And Lucy and I kind of went to Korea together when I was still independent, because we did Legally Blonde from Leicester Curve and took it to a festival in Daegu. And so Lucy's kind of doing that. And then Stars comes on in the background, 30 years on from when it was in the Albert Hall that inspired me, and you've just come downstairs having won Best New Musical. Yeah, it was astonishing. I just was sort of stood there in stunned silence, really, just thinking this is happening.
That's so special, that sort of circularity of that being something that was so important to you. I mean, it was so important to me. They broadcast that concert on a new year. It would have been 95, wouldn't it? And maybe it was the new year going into 96. And they broadcast it on Sky, and I was out with my school friends and I was like, sorry, I've got to go now because like Les Mis is on the telly, and I've pegged it home. And that's how I spent my new year. And I decorated the video so I knew where it was, and like you watched it over and over. And now what's weird is, we're in this industry and we're looking at those people and we know half of them, we can talk to half of them and have a conversation with them because they're our friends and our co-workers. And it's a weird feeling, isn't it, when you remember that kid?
It is, and you constantly remain grounded to that. I sort of feel pleased that it is a weird feeling, but never anything that you would take for granted. I.e., what you've just said. Yes, you're right. You can be talking to someone even about a project. I mean, one of the reasons reasons why I was able to keep move into the commercial sector was because of Trevor Nunn. And when I was independent in 2012, we directed this play I was able to produce. And yes, a lot of this just stays in your head or in your body. It's not something you just overly articulate the whole time. However, really a day goes by where you just kind of go, this is incredible in many ways.
That's why I want to do this podcast, because quite often on a podcast, we talk about the shows we're in and the shows that we're promoting and the rehearsals for them and how did they go and the cast members. Whereas I want to find out, like you said, the things that are in our heads that we don't articulate. It's really fun. I'm going to start with our questions, Richard, because we've got 10 questions to get through.
Great.
The first one is, how did you and musical theatre first meet? Was it the Les Mis video?
Yeah, you can wind back a bit, I suppose. I was in primary school in Poulton-le-File, just outside of Blackpool, and there's this amateur dramatic company called the Chaldeans, which put on a musical every year. And I heard that my friend, one of my best friends, was sort of in the chorus of it, of The King and I. And I said to my dad, I should be in that. or can I be in that? And so he had to ring up Dorothy Duxbury, who was directing it. And so that's how it began. So that's kind of local community group connected to just our Church of England church. And my dad joined it as well.
Oh, wow.
Without much prior experience. I don't think he did The King and I thing. I just did The King and I, and then the one following that was Calamity Jane. He was Francis Fryer in that. And maybe, I don't know. At the time, I probably thought it was a convenient way to just give me a lift there and back. And he said, oh, well, I'd better be in it.
And then he got a great part.
Great role.
And didn't you have to dress in drag as Francis Fryer, from what I remember?
Yeah.
My dad played that part as well when we did it. And everyone's like, your dad's wearing a dress. And I was like, yeah, this is totally normal for my family.
Yeah, correct. Totally normal.
Yeah.
So this was, probably from the ages of 6 or 7, I suppose, through to, let's say, 10 or 12, and actually probably one a year. And actually really being, again, didn't quite know at the time, because I just thought this is good fun. But you're being exposed to really, so yes, it was King and I, Calamity Jane, Joseph as one of the chorus, and again, Dad played Simeon, good part. My Fair Lady, and just one a year. So I suppose that's where it all began first, and I was being introduced to these things. However, I do remember just before, it must have been 12 or 13, to then going on a coach trip to the Manchester Palace and seeing, whenever Les Miserables moved from London, it went to Manchester for a sort of certain period of time. Yeah, I remember seeing that. I suppose that was like, wow, musicals don't just happen in our church hall. They can happen in this massive, massive theatre. So really, I suppose what all that boils down to is that my mum and dad were just kind of exposing me to opportunities like that and to seeing stuff like that, and it's all starting to seep in, and it's all starting to kind of sit with you, and I feel very not only grateful but encouraging of it as well, just because I do think it is an amazing medium to open your eyes, whether you know they're being open or whether you're being introduced to it or not. You're just there experiencing it.
And I love how Amdram is so important to so many people. It's where I started, it's where my husband started. I love how grassroots it is. You don't have to have a lot of money. From what I'm aware, I don't know if that's changed, but I think, to go to the local Amdram group, join in, meet fellow people that you have a similar interest to, and just find all these wonderful characters in Amdram. Like, I love the name you said. Is it Dorothy Duxbury?
Yeah.
What a fabulous name.
Yeah.
What an absolutely fabulous name. And I can almost picture her. I don't know her, but just through her name, I bet she was fabulous.
Completely. The director of The King and I. Correct, exactly. But also what a great platform being introduced to musicals, because it's storytelling for storytelling's sake. You're right. The Amdram community of it is just this shared experience. You actually try and recreate the principles of it, which is actually a shared collective energy. That's essentially what you're trying to do. You're trying to get an equality amongst the whole company that's creating a show, whether that's the producer or the director or the choreographer or the lead cast and the principals and the ensemble. What you're trying to do is get a sense of we're all on a shared level here, trying to bring our best work and our best energies together, and don't really worry about what the hierarchy of these roles. Of course they're there, but like, we're all actually just here to have the shared experience.
Yeah, and to tell a story.
Yeah.
Having worked for you, that is something that you do bring as a producer as well. I always say this too, you're probably bored of hearing it, but working for you and for Adam, you're the most approachable producers I've ever worked with. And I think that permeates through a company. It makes everybody feel like they belong and they aren't in any sort of order. It's a really lovely feeling.
We certainly never get bored of hearing that. And I think it's, but actually, I guess it is our currency. And I don't know if one of the questions is who's inspired you along the way, but Adam Spears is certainly there as a name, taught me as well. I mean, taught me so much. And actually, the reality is that ethos, thankfully, it's kind of within us anyway. However, we are consciously trying with the teams we work with, everybody, to build that culture, essentially just producing without ego, but also underlying, it's also really important to give the best chance of creating the work that we want to create.
Yeah.
In truth, if the atmosphere is one of openness and positive energy, then you've got the best shot, really. So it's who we are, but it's also the right way of building stuff. So it's nice to hear.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you said you jumped in and did The King and I. So the next question was, what musical were you first personally involved with? I guess maybe this should come from a producing point of view. What was the first musical you produced?
Yeah, there's probably two further stages, which are kind of sort of beats in time, really. One was kind of evolving from that Amdram world into Blackpool. It's called the Whittaker Dance and Drama Centre, which is actually there where I started formal lessons, both in kind of, and so as, and again, another person, when you think about people along the way, called Jack Ganley, who ran the centre for many years. And they did everything, but they also did speaking of verse and prose and the Lambda exams and stuff, and which I then went through that process. And the reason why, I suppose, is because then you start to get a bit more in depth, I suppose. You learn about other things, not just musicals, the whole wider artistic community.
Taking things apart.
Yeah, people then, people are applying for these names that you've never heard of, and people going like, well, what, where are you going? Well, I want to go to the Royal Ballet, or I want to go to Italia Conti or Lane, and you go, well, what's all this? And and RADA and Lambda, and you start to sort of learn about the stepping stones to the professional world, I suppose. But very much only a beat, because it certainly was never a stepping stone, I thought. I was never there kind of going, this is going to all happen. I just, maybe that was the mentality of living in Lancashire, but you just sort of thought it was something that other people did. So there was that. And I suppose then, fast forward, there's obviously, they say it sort of slightly sweepingly, but then I did a lot of theatre in university. And then, however, then again, I never felt I was going to jump into the profession. And I actually, my first 3 years outside of university were working for an airline.
Oh, wow.
I was like a management trainee for Cathay Pacific Airways, and I was based in Hong Kong. But however, I joined the Hong Kong Singers just on the side.
Excellent.
Mainly because they were doing production of Guys and Dolls, and I thought, there's a part there. So I did Sky Masterson for the Hong Kong Singers.
Fabulous.
Well, it's a nice thing to mention because that was in 2004. So just in terms of the musical journey, and then 2015 was when I was first involved in Guys and Dolls, which was then on a producing level. That was the first show that came into the West End. It was led by Tris Baker and Runaway Entertainment that I then co-produced with him. Claire Foster did Sarah Brown and the shows at Chichester. Claire, of course, was nominated for Best Actress in Benjamin Button, and it's just a joy. And so that's a significant kind of double leg. However, I suppose 3 years of doing a non-theatre job, I always say it was great because I really enjoyed it, but I also realised my heart wasn't totally in it. So I always say, like, you don't ever quite know necessarily what you want to do, but sometimes you know what you don't want to do.
Yeah.
And I think, if anything, 3 years in management training I was like, I probably don't want to. I'm probably, I'm going to be a terrible dinner party chat if I constantly say I work for an airline. 2006, I moved to London. I never lived in London, but my uncle, who's deputy head teacher, retired now, and he said you can come and rent a room in Lewisham, which is what I did. And I suppose that began the journey. And that journey was, in inverted commas, me and a couple of other mates set up a theatre company. Didn't really, thankfully, know what that meant then, because it was this sort of collective, doing everything all together. And very quickly in that journey, we were sort of doing everything, writing, directing, trying to put scratch nights on Edinburgh, European festivals. We got a gig at Latitude one year, We actually made a living by taking a two-person play about mathematics around schools, which on the suggestion of my dad, who was a retired maths teacher, he said that go and do that. So I guess what was happening then was I was evolving into being a producer. And by that, it just was a natural kind of taking the lead on picking up the phone, trying to get some bookings, actually trying to put some sort of spreadsheet together to try and work out like what's the ins and outs of it.
Yeah.
It was quite rudimentary, but it was that. And I remember actually distinctly at Latitude that we were doing this play that we'd written called Unmythable, which was all the Greek myths in an hour. And I was there counting the audience how many people were watching us, like while we're on stage doing it. And I thought, thought, maybe I'm not in the moment anymore. maybe I'm not maybe I'm not giving my character quite the level of commitment that maybe I once did, that actually I'm counting who's here.
You're literally counting the bums on seats. I love that.
yeah, from the stage. And that began the full evolution. And that again changed further, I think, in 2012. Again, the full circle of Button. In 2009, I did the first play at the Arcola. Production manager was Gary Beestone. Gary's this incredible production manager, does Stranger Things and Cabaret. And he's also a producer because his office was next to Southwark. And he saw Benjamin Button. And he said, let's do it together. And so being on that stage on Sunday night with Gary and Zoe Snow, who we did the Olympics together with in 2012, it's just, you can't put it into words. It's just amazing that it's actually true.
Did you just say the Olympics? Did you do something with the Olympics in 2012?
Yeah. So there was Gary Beestone. He got the gig to be the production manager of the 2012, the victory ceremonies, all 806 Olympic and Paralympic medal ceremonies.
Wow.
Yeah, talk about meeting people along the way. And he rang me and he says, we need some producers, freelancers who could basically pause what they were doing for sort of 5-6 months, jump on board the Olympic train and deliver these 5 to 10 minute 806 shows, essentially, with volunteers, athletes, venues, podiums in the right place, camera angles in the right place, flags in the right order, all the rest of it.
Gosh, I don't even think of that, really. When you see an Olympic ceremony, you just sort of go, oh, it's just people giving out medals. You don't actually, of course, it has to be coordinated and produced and designed and
Oh, yeah. I mean, especially when some of the events got horses on the podium,
Yeah, of course.
You're exactly right. They just they just waft their way into existence. You're like, no. They're meticulously planned with all the volunteers and right from the flowers being in the right order on each tray and each medal. And it just required this kind of zero margin of error, precision. So I think it's funny. I'm afraid we segue because it's not, by no means a musical. However, I think it was a very significant moment in terms of moving from a kind of subsistence, hand to mouth kind of producing world into actually going, whoa, there's a big industry out there and people are creating limited companies and doing it. So that again was a big shift. And then also in 2012, I had this play again that Trevor Nunn directed, and it was a Samuel Beckett play that was done as a radio play called All That Fall. Truly outstanding. And Trevor came back and said, good news, Eileen Atkins is going to play the lead role. This was at the German Street Theatre, 70 seats.
Wow.
And then 3 months later came back and said, good news, Michael Gambon's going to play her husband.
That's incredible.
I said, yeah, it was incredible. It was, actually that was Michael's, when we went the New York leg of that, which then happened, that was Michael's last time on stage. So I was able to take that into the arts for 3 weeks. And then this comment from Michael Gambon, he said, a couple of weeks in New York would be nice. I was like, crikey. Last time I went to New York, I was 15 on a family holiday, so I better work it out. Anyway, long and short of that is that star-led world, it's so much as likely not to happen as to happen, because you only need something subtle to happen, and then all of a sudden the dates shift, it doesn't work. They're quite delicate like that. I thought it was not by necessity, because I thought, well, I can't make a living out of doing any of this. It's too thin. And we were doing the teaching work on the side. And I'd found out at the time, this was now 2013, the rights to Avenue Q were available for a UK tour. And I think they'd taken it into the West End. They'd run it in the West End, done a tour for a big theatre organisation. It probably wasn't big enough. But thankfully, I didn't know that at the time. So I was like, actually, I'd love to tour it. I guess maybe, again, the new musical journey. I just thought it was just fantastic. And in hindsight, again, 11? Yeah, it's 11 in the cast, 14 in total. To be honest, it's a very young ensemble who have all kind of taking it as a credit straight out of kind of theatre schools. So actually there's to tour it, there was it's a relatively small band. So actually it was all in all quite deliverable as an ambitious piece. It's not like some of the other huge stuff. And so we toured it with another company, David Hutchinson, who ran a company called Cellar Door at the time. And we joined together and ran it. And at the same time, I realised I needed another one. And someone said, what about Return to the Forbidden Planet? And that was the only one again. And I knew it because I did it when I was 17 in sixth form.
Brilliant.
And it was Actor Muso. It was being built out of the Hornchurch Queen's Theatre. Bob Carlton, who'd created it, was the artistic director of Queen's. I partnered with a producer called John Dalston. We kind of just did it together. Again, it's hard to say what's the driver. I think the honest thing is that actually you're trying to look for things that you can deliver, things that you're excited by. But crucially, you go, okay, well, what are all the components here? Size, scale, whether it's going to sit there. And for me, it didn't require any star names to be in it, which is where I sort of just come from on that other project. So I thought you can sell it by name alone.
It's really interesting because obviously you're the first producer we've had on the podcast. Everyone else is talking about the creation of something and what works creatively, but it's really interesting to get like like a producer's eye on if the opportunity is there, do you grab it or not? And does the opportunity suit you? Really fascinating.
Be interested to see how it contrasts, because everything, hopefully I've said there's a creative angle to it, really. All you're trying to think about is how this jigsaw comes together, and you're wanting to take the whole team with you. But essentially, like, can we deliver it? Can we get the dates? Will we get it booked in? You want to build something where the ecosystem can benefit, like it can work.
It's like creative logistics, isn't it, basically?
Yeah.
It can't just be one or the other. The practicalities of it have to measure up and match up. I guess, especially when you're starting out and you're limited on budget and things like that. I guess once you are massive, like you are now, I guess it's more exciting. There's probably a lot more that you can put into place to put on shows, that you can have that creativity as well as the practicality, maybe less so.
Yes.
Does that make any sense?
Yes, it absolutely does. I say now, all of this leads to being able to get someone like Jethro Compton down with Benjamin Button. When you say you want to be the guide and be the shepherd, and you personally, of course, we all want to take the risk on brand new theatre, but you've got to take the right stepping stones in order to get there.
Yeah.
I think it was interesting when you hit Cameron McIntosh. Again, he started out touring things. Salad Days was the first thing. And I think initially, you're right. You're trying to build credibility, really, to agents, to rights holders. You're trying to sort of go, okay, well, why would you be a good person to lead on this? And you go, what? Because so yes, in the first instances, you're right. And sometimes you hear on panels and people say, like, what drives you to a musical? And sometimes they just answer saying, well, I have to just be completely inspired and in love. And it's like, yes, but it's not just that. You've got to also think there's so many wonderful ideas that just don't, unfortunately, that maybe could be niche, or it could just be, it's just hard to know the stepping stones for a commercial journey. That's what you're also trying to do. As a producer, have a slate of work as well. That's, as in...
It builds that up.
Yeah, I can constantly say, and it's really lovely actually through ATG that we get to be so broad in what we do, because we've just got theatres of different shapes and sizes in different markets. So I think it's absolutely brilliant. The reality is that Benjamin Button doesn't really happen without Pretty Woman and 9 to 5. And that's good. It's fantastic. Well over 1 million people have seen those two musicals, more really. And yes, people back those. And of course, by doing that, you're able to say, what about this? And what about this new journey as well? And yeah, hopefully that's quite a convoluted way of trying to piece it together.
No, it's great. It's an ecosystem, isn't it? All has to balance out. Richard, I think this might be a Les Miserables answer. Which musical that isn't yours have you seen the most?
Yes, I was trying to say, have I seen anyone else's musical? Well, because there are, our own musicals along the way that, really have seen quite a lot.
Yeah.
So 9 to 5 included. And I've seen Les Miserables 8 times, but over quite a period of time, I guess.
Yeah.
So yes, I would say, yes, I was. And actually, I remember wanting to see it when it came back in that concert version after COVID. And that reminded me of the 10th anniversary thing. So I suppose Les Mis is the one that I would still, or have always, queued up, bought a ticket and said, going to go and watch Les Miserables.
You bought a ticket? I didn't think producers did that these days.
Yeah, going online, looking around.
I guess if it's not your show, you've still got to pay. No, it's great. I think Les Mis is probably the one I've seen the most as well. I don't know if it's our generation or what, but to be fair, I haven't seen it for a very long time, but it's the one that got me into it. There's something for everybody in it, isn't there? The story is so fabulous.
And I don't know whether there's anything more scientific about kind of people being captured by theatre at a certain impressionable age. So maybe that's it. You're much younger than me. But but as in, I think we
I'm not at all younger than you. I don't think I'm younger than you at all.
You must be. There was a period of time, they call it the golden age. And I suppose if I was in my 30s then, I don't know, would it have been the same thing with all the pressures of life and real life and kids and family and everything? Because the other one is, Miss Saigon, which is, again, Bill Beale and Schoenberg. It's like, when I wrote another. I've seen Cats a bunch of times, though, I guess, because going to Dusseldorf tomorrow, which is very excitingly, to open a production of Cats, which...
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's great. Crossroads do. It's part of my role with ATG Europe, and those big shows around that time,
They were huge, weren't they? I don't think anyone can underplay the impact of those big shows like Miss Saigon, Phantom, Les Mis, Cats. They were just enormous, and they were all Cameron. It really put British musicals back on the map, even though some of them written by Frenchmen. They were championed and put on here. It was that they used to be called the mega musicals. Do you remember? I think that was, I think it's because they had had mega sets and vast casts. A really exciting time. I think that was when I was impressionable, and that was when I decided that was absolutely what I wanted to do.
Epic in theme as well.
Yeah.
And I think that stayed with me. And actually, I suppose what draws you to a musical, I guess I'm drawn to the epic, because those are the musicals that I really learned about, I suppose. And then in later years, you start to learn about the musicals that preceded that, the classics, I suppose.
Yeah.
But a lot of them originating in America, whether that is Hello, Dolly, or Me and My Girl, or Anything Goes, incredible. And that, but very different in structure, very different, like, as in that they're these comedies that have genius choreography and they're kind of the visual world to them as well. But they're very different, is the reality, than the mega musicals that came after.
There's such a variety, isn't there, in the musical theatre world?
Yeah.
Which musicals made you laugh the most and cry the most?
I think it's sometimes you say the first answer that comes into your head. Book of Mormon, laugh out loud. I mean, you know, I've not seen it for a while, but like when it first came to London, I suppose maybe that's what we're talking about how different some musicals can be. Yeah, I do think that properly turned the dial, because I think also you're also introduced to American creative teams. Our own teams are brilliant, but there's something particularly about the choreography, something particularly about the precision of that. But then within it, you've got this really contemporary dialogue and story, and it's just outrageous.
Outrageous is a good word for Book of Mormon, isn't it? It really is.
Yeah, because again, I love the conversation that, you know, that they go, so what's it about? You know, and they say, well, there's nothing about it that is helpful to unpack it, really. There's nothing about it. When you think about the theatre owners, the programmers and the people kind of mitigating risk and all these things, it's just great. And then someone goes, yeah, all right, go on, we'll do it.
We'll give it a go.
And then bang. The one that made me cry is a musical that we took on in 2017, Big Fish. There was this big production on Broadway, and we were working with a lovely guy, actor-director Nigel Harmon. He just was like, we should give this a go, because it was done on a grand scale on Broadway. Nigel was definitely like, this is a more intimate piece, or it could be a more intimate piece. And so we did it with a cast of 14 in the Other Palace, a 300-seat theatre in Victoria. And I was a young dad at the time, so I suppose because the story really is about, I mean, essentially the main line in it, the son says to the father, all this time I thought you were trying to impress me, but I realised you were trying to inspire me. And it's very sentimental, but that connection between father, son, families, it's very big-hearted stuff, that story.
Yeah.
Without spoiling the story for anyone, it's a father who's on his way out, really. There's a lot of these stories, and it's about, did this happen or didn't this happen? And it's actually just about sharing stories with a view to inspire. And then at the end, there's a song called What's Next? He's heading to the river. He's actually in his hospital bed, but his imagination takes over. And everybody who's inspired him and loved him and been part of his life is there at the end by this river.
Oh, God, you're giving me goosebumps.
And there's not a dry eye there.
Yeah.
And then right at the end, his wife comes on in the end and he says, it ends with you and it ends with me.
Oh,
and
God.
It's the way our story. Yeah, it's epic.
I don't know it. I do get sung it quite a lot when I'm teaching. There's a beautiful song about fighting the dragon. Is it I fight the dragon?
Yeah.
Da, da, da.
Yeah.
That's a great song.
Yes.
And so I've heard that a few times. I know Mike came to see it at the Other Palace and loved it, but I have a feeling it was sort of early days of motherhood for me. So I was like, no, I can't. I was chained to a baby.
Yeah.
Happily chained to a baby, obviously, but yeah, I didn't get to see it.
Yeah, it would have been around then.
Yeah.
And I think actually it didn't have a bigger life. I don't know. There's a variety of reasons, but I don't know. I partly wonder whether sometimes that emotional journey actually took audiences or some audiences by surprise. And particularly if some people got direct experience of that, particularly with a parent, some of them, I remember people watching it saying they'd had a recent kind of death of a parent. They wasn't expecting this, and it's kind of
a bit too close.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's quite raw.
Yeah.
But no, it's truly, truly gorgeous musical.
So not only did I not see Big Fish, probably the worst confession that any musical theatre practitioner can make is I have never ever seen a professional production of West Side Story, and I will remedy that one day. Is there a musical out there that you regret not seeing or haven't seen yet that you feel like you really should have done? Or
That's quite a question, my friend. I mean, there's a lot, yeah. It's a shocking amount. Unfortunately, you do spend a lot of time with your own shows just like,
because it's your job.
yeah, there's always a lot to check in on, and if fortunate, like with 9 to 5, and there's life beyond the life. So actually, it's the job. But yeah, I mean, I've not seen West Side Story either.
Oh, that's good. I don't feel quite so bad now.
Well, I nearly did. I basically nearly did. I went to see the international tour only because, on behalf of ACG Europe, I'm actually producing the world tour next year. So I thought better probably see it. Anyway, my flight to Dublin was delayed, and so I only caught the last 20 minutes. So basically, I was like, lovely. But anyway, so I probably shouldn't admit that too much.
So you will see that soon at some point.
I will see that soon. I've still not seen Starlight Express either, and actually, and especially just been back in the ether so much recently.
I saw that originally. I saw that quite a few times. I've not seen the new version.
Yeah, I'm not sure I should admit to either.
It's all right. No one will listen to this anyway. It's all of just a passion project.
Yeah, I suppose those are the two biggest. But yes, actually, I think talk about stuff that's inspired us. I was very late, for example, to Sondheim. I think it was almost kind of probably I remember seeing Merrily We Roll Along when it was in the West End, and probably at the similar time there was the Sweeney Todd's, the Michael Ball and Melba Storms one, which I think you start to realise the discordant nature of what it is, and there's a whole body obviously of Sondheim's work where people sort of refer to Little Night Music and Into the Woods.
What we were saying back earlier on about Amdram and how much we're exposed to by doing that. My parents did it the whole time growing up, and every 6 months they were doing a different show. So I got this, like you say, this broad spectrum of great shows, and from different eras like Gilbert and Sullivan and Kiss Me Kate and Oklahoma and Guys and Dolls. And I guess they didn't do particularly modern ones at the time, but I had that experience. And then obviously you go into the business, and because you're working in it, there's not as much opportunity to go and see stuff. We were actually going to go and see an Amdram show today, and it's one of our friends, and it's like, you play better parts in shows, you play more parts in shows than I do, and I'm a professional actress. But also they put on shows that have been tried and tested and have already found an audience.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's great about it, is that learning experience you are learning from musicals that really made it and really landed. So you are working on the best stuff. Whereas sometimes, especially when we're in that process of like workshopping things and doing things that haven't been tried and tested, it's sometimes quite a struggle to do these things. Like, oh, is this working? Is this not working? It's much more of it's fun, but it's so much more of a challenge, I think.
That's right. I think it can highlight how hard it is to get the structure of a musical right. And I wanted to just speak about it from a producing point of view, but the one thing that those shows have, they have the right characters, they have the right parts. Just Calamity Jane, for example. Well, look at that role, look at the Calamity, look at Wild Bill, look at Danny, look, for example. But then there's other ones. Grease is probably a good example like that. There's just, again, they go roles that would be sought after. The reality is that sometimes if a production is too ensemble, for example, then it might not have those big enough parts for people to really engage with. But taking a step back from that, yes, it is. I still feel, I mean, the music's got to be there, but the hardest thing is still the book, I think. Sometimes things come together because there are some great songs, original or otherwise, and then you go, okay, well, there's a good kernel to start from, that actually that's it. And you go, yes, but that book's got to really land.
Yeah, got to put them in the right place. And yeah, there's a lot of talk about book writing on this podcast, and I do think it's really underrated as a skill and a job, really.
Yes.
Because it's very difficult. When it's good, they get forgotten about. When it's not good, they're blamed.
Yes.
It's a slightly thankless job. Let's go to an interval and come back for the next 5 questions.
G'day listeners, another show you can find on the Bloop network is Thrash and Treasure, where legendary artists from Broadway, West End, Hollywood and beyond deep dive into 2 seemingly opposite genres of music, heavy metal and musical theatre. From Tony winners to reality TV contestants, hear a vast range of iconic guests, learn about genres of music they've never been exposed to. With over 130 episodes, there's bound to be a silly, sassy and insightful conversation that'll have you reaching for the leather pants and hairspray. And here is a sneak peek. Anyways, we're back with Thrash and Treasure. I'm good Aaron. That's evil Aaron. And we're joined by Broadway's leading lady, Christiane Knoll. We'll move on to the metal now.
Okay.
So have you had much experience with metal, heavy metal, glam metal, et al., thrash metal, death metal, industrial metal?
Well, no. No. I think as close as I got would be like Heart. Yep. Because like I love the like screaming Queen things, but I will say I was a Def Leppard fan back in the 80s. Well, Led Zeppelin, I don't consider that to be metal. Like anything, I would almost get like the thrasher stuff where they're just sort of screaming. That's usually where it turned me off because I like to sing along. Yep. And as you can hear, I work very hard to keep myself in good health when it comes to my voice. So thrasher stuff, even though it'd probably be fantastic to go into a rage room and like take a bat to everything while that's going on, it's not necessarily music that I want to sing along to because then you like hurts your feelings. But is it Devil's Kin or Devil's Skin?
Our long-time listeners will laugh at that because every time we have a band on that has a name that I can deliberately mispronounce, I will. So yes, let's call them Devil's Kin because that's their name. It's meant to be Devil's Skin, but we'll call them Devil's Kin.
Like, as in the things that you like pick off your... Okay.
Yep.
Picking the things off your face, Devil's Skin.
Yeah, I think.
What a vocalist.
I know.
Good heavens. That woman. Talk about, well, I had to do some more probing. She does a cover of Barracuda. Did you know that?
Yep. Yep, I've heard it. Yep.
That's amazing.
Yep.
Yeah, see that? And then she started, now is she the one that is also doing the...
Yeah.
Or is that someone else that's doing the screaming?
Both of them are her. Talk about a goddess of carnage.
And two-sided because it's so melodic at times and then, just screaming. Thrashing, but yeah. I did a show called Broadway Rocks, but I can't call it that. Like Total Eclipse of the Heart, and that was fun. And just like things that were written for the Broadway stage that would be a little heavier. I love that because I like screaming high and that's... So, yeah, a little bit.
Cool. Well, if you could pick your ultimate, most over-the-top rock star rider, what are you going to put on it?
My over-the-top rock star rider, something completely unnecessary, is a separate room and person for my dog to be there at all times and then, walk them and, make sure that they're okay, even if she's barking. I now have a dog, which makes it difficult to sort of do anything. For a while, it was my child, but my child is now 16 and I never see her anymore. So I don't have to worry about a separate room for her. Yep. But I think a separate sort of existence so that my dog will not freak out that I have to leave at home. Yeah. So far, they're being very good. You'll hear if our neighbor pulls in and because she will announce she is an alarm.
What's her name?
Her name is Addie.
Addie? Oh, lovely.
Yeah. She's a rescue, which she had a lot of trauma. And we've gotten rid of a lot of it, but some of it is still there. I know that certain dog trainers are like, no, they don't remember anything. I'm like, no, they do. But she's come a long way. And when she finally is like peaceful and chill, and we realize we've done a good thing. So.
Hello and welcome back to the second act of Talk Musicals to Me with award-winning producer Richard Darbourne. Richard, thank you for all your fabulous chat so far. I'm going to crack on with the next question. Which musical would you put on a school curriculum?
Wow. The first answer that came into my head, which may be a bit macabre, but Sweeney Todd, I think, is something that you can learn from because as it's so different than other musicals that go before it.
Yeah.
I guess like the traditional versions of Oklahoma or whatever. This is written in this way, and it's truly a remarkable piece. And I don't know, I've not learned enough about people that follow that, like Lin-Manuel Miranda and these kind of sort of single-handed kind of things. But it just feels like it can only be be one person's kind of a singular vision to go, I'm going to tell this story in this way with these songs and link this score together. And I'm going to use this dialogue and I'm going to sort of have this dialogue off the beat. And again, as a premise, honestly, a barber in old London, it's an extraordinary premise for a musical, and one that you would think, how can that possibly work?
Yeah, that's the thing though, isn't it, about so many great musicals, is that the idea of them is so mad, and yet on the whole they're fantastic musicals. Like, with Hamilton, the story of Alexander Hamilton, whoever thought that would make such a hit musical? Obviously because it's been done so imaginatively and creatively and brilliantly. But are there writers out there with like completely wacky ideas that totally miss the point? I'm sure there are, but then the ones that land are the ones that you just go, wow, there are ideas for musicals in everything, aren't there? Really?
Yeah, there are. And I still feel we've got some beats to go through in the UK, both in terms of how we take our audiences on the journey, but also the theatres that programme them, and the finance that we can raise and invest to incubate them, which is basically and I feel like we are still a step behind where the US is.
I was going to ask a question because I don't know where the buck stops. Obviously ATG has their theatres, and you as a producer have your ideas for shows you want to put on. So say I own the Sheen Theatre in the West End of London, and you come to me. Is it me that says, I don't like that idea for a show? Or is it a deal? Is it more of a bargain?
So we've got to get the Sheen Theatre on the journey to believe the journey. The Sheen Theatre is going to say, look, we've got these 4 options. Let's say one of them is mega famous thingy, or really, you're going to be looking at, yes, but I've got a budget. I need X amount of people to try and come and see this for you. We've got the cost of running it. So it starts earlier. Also, you need to know that we've got the financial wherewithal to build it. We factored in 12 weeks of running at a loss for Benjamin Button, and because we knew it was going to take word of mouth to grow and to build. Like, you've got to factor that in. And again, that's years of kind of knowing, learning, preparing. So you can stake X amount on how you develop something. And I guess just, if someone says, is that an initial stake to develop a musical of like £250,000 or something, which is quite, it's a lot of money. And then if you need to go through it again, you've spent 500 or upwards. Again, in the US, you could be spending at least double that, even triple that, which is a phenomenal amount of risk money. But there's also an understanding that there's a risk reward money. And Broadway's a bigger market, and as the school, but as in, you're getting people kind of going, let's not just develop it through one workshop. Maybe it needs 2 or 3, or it needs lots of different it needs a lot of front money. Come From Away is probably a good example. Dear Evan Hansen's a good example. Like, of actually kind of going, we're going to build these things over time, because that's how long it needs to get it right. I think, understandably, we're still at a place here where it takes a long time to be able to raise that level of capital risk. We're still in the world of let's make the smaller financial bet, which then can mean we're trying to get brand new ideas, which, as you say, could be based around anything. However, it's less about the subject matter. It's actually then about, usually, there's a bunch of stuff that doesn't work with a musical the first time it comes up. Like, massively, even the stuff that's got great heart, great potential, etc., it's just not going to be finished. But sometimes then musicals don't get to the next stage because they're seen as, that didn't go quite as well as hoped. And you go, but that's because we haven't built the longer game structure. Because what we need to do is build a journey. So maybe it's a tryout theatre, maybe it's a small theatre, maybe it's the Edinburgh Festival, maybe it's somewhere small and subsidised, and then it's the next step, then it's the next step. But you've got to finance all of that, because otherwise we've not got a chance of getting the Sheen Theatre to, otherwise we're not going to take it, because we haven't built up a fan base, we haven't built up an audience, we haven't built up any heat. It's never going to be like, really, even my choice or your choice. It will be a sense that, look at these. And again, reality is reviews play a role in that as well, boringly. It's a sort of weird third-party adjudication process that we have to go through. And with musicals, it doesn't always correlate. You can be academically kind of judged with something that's pretty much an emotional response. They're not always to be examined quite as forensically as maybe a play is. Sometimes a disconnect. That plays a role. The people backing it play a role. The people receiving it play a role. How we're going to sell it plays a role. It's actually quite a number of components.
It sounds very complicated.
Yeah.
But what does sound good is the Sheen Theatre. I think that sounds really good.
Yeah.
I think that might have to happen.
That could be the answer. The home of new musical theatre. The basically is like, yeah, come on, come all.
Let's do it.
So yeah, it is complicated. Yeah.
Is there there a musical that has brought you closest to wanting to end your love affair with musical theatre? You don't have to name names. Nobody ever names names. They're all very cagey.
Where you've just gone, oh, crikey, this is... Yeah, I mean, never end the love affair, but yeah, there's just examples where you can watch stuff and see the beats get missed, basically. Not long enough to be developed. And I've never seen them quite at the commercial stage, but you've seen stuff where, and I've been there too as well, but you look around and you go, only the people that have created this musical are the people that are in love with it.
Oh, yeah.
I remember seeing years ago, there was this sort of thing in development and it had quite a lot of components to it, but there was this sort of belief that this is going to be the seminal, and it wasn't. Yeah. That time you're like...
Yeah. It must be hard, mustn't it, as a producer and a creative, when you are so involved in something and you have seen it in lots of different incarnations, to then, after a while, your view must get quite cloudy of it because you're so involved and you're so familiar to be able to judge something properly because there are so many other components. You know, I guess creatively you fall in love with it and maybe the flaws aren't as visible.
Yeah, it's the biggest irony.
Yeah.
So incredible. Like a 6-year journey or a big journey with a musical, and every person who is crafting it can't ever watch it fresh for the first time.
Yeah.
You can't watch it objectively and just go, you're in the minutiae of like, well, this bit, and how do you think that bit of the show went? And it's like, never mind that. How are you just receiving this piece right now? Like just as a whole, because that is what your audience is.
How do you step away?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the way you try and do that is have a good relationship with the people. So again, just from Adam Spears or Serene Walker, our producing team, we'd always keep 2 or if not one of them back from being part of it.
Right.
Because they're the most valuable to come in either at the sort of late rehearsal stage or even the first preview stage. Even with revivals, it just generally it's like they can go, and it's stuff you haven't even got in your head. And it can be like, I don't know, a lighting journey doesn't make sense in that particular song, or I just couldn't, it could be practical stuff.
Yeah.
You want that objectivity as much as possible.
Keep somebody back as like a secret weapon and then bring them in.
Yeah.
I love that. Is there a musical that changed you, that you went in and watched it and you've come out and you live your life differently because of it, or you made an important life choice because of it?
It's hard to go back to Les Mis again. I still think that's the biggest because I don't think until that point I had any idea that there were different ways of living your life and having a different profession. Yeah. Like my mum and dad both teachers and his brother was a teacher, and we lived in a town in Lancashire where people kind of, I don't know, just did the jobs we all did, and then we'd go and do some Amdram stuff and that's what we would do. And not even on stage. I think distinctly remember on the VHS videos that all the creatives walked up at the end and they kind of all went on stage. These people do this for a living.
Yeah, it's a job. I remember somebody telling me you could do it for a job. And I was like, what?
Yes.
I thought a job was, my parents both teachers as well, or, sitting behind a desk or, doing something that you didn't necessarily love every day. But mind you, I don't necessarily love this every day either. But I'm glad I'm doing it.
Yes, it's pretty crazy at times. I'm also aware it's very varied. It doesn't just change by the hour, it changes by the email. And I think it just is very different all of the time.
Yeah.
And I actually realised that probably works quite well for me. The flexibility and the different juggling actually, I think, suits me quite well.
Yeah, so it is exciting. I do know, that whole experience with 9 to 5, how you needed to find a new leading lady because your leading lady had got injured. And I just got a phone call saying, can you audition tomorrow on a Friday? And then you offered me the job that evening and I started on the Saturday. And, on the Wednesday, I was twiddling my thumbs going, what is this year going to hold in store for me? I don't know. And suddenly by the next week, I'm in a West End show, and that surprise and that variety and that excitement is really addictive. And that's what keeps you going, really, I think.
Yeah, on both sides of that fence, we had this big tech period coming up. And so, yeah, we had no choice. We had to just find someone who could just fill that. And otherwise, the show wouldn't open. Oh, yeah, that Friday afternoon. What's so nice to be on the other side of that fence is that you're also watching, you're being totally inspired and wowed by, you come in and you're sitting there going, I know this lady's got to start tomorrow, but you know you can do it. You're sitting there going, Caroline can do this. Like, you just know. And there's something about, like, I don't know, the years of whatever brings you to that moment.
Yeah.
And it was true.
I remember Jeff asked me, how's your dancing? And I was like, oh, I can dance a bit. I'm not a great dancer. And you literally just went, I just saw you dancing Crazy for You. And I went, oh, yeah, I can sort of dance. Yes, I was really doing myself down. I think because I thought, Jeff and his sort of Newsies background, I'm not a newsie, me, but I was okay to prance around a bit for 9 to 5.
Yeah. I was like, yeah, I just saw you dance. This is really all right. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, I think Les Mis and like seeing, I love that visual that you've got of everybody coming together, the collaboration that is needed across the board to put on something so spectacular and tell that story is inspiring. And I think it does make you go, I want to do that. Makes me do that anyway, The next question is, what do you think is the secret to a good musical? Richard is thinking.
Yeah. Yes, Richard is thinking. I suppose I can only really answer it from a producing perspective, because actually there is something, of course, within the book and the music and the lyrics. And Button's a good example, because actually I spent watching stuff in developments and on the fringe and in different places. And in 2019, there was this, why does Button get to this moment? And in the case of Button, you're waiting for that moment where you go, that's just not quite, it's too niche, or that bit goes off in a tangent there. And it never did. And I think, why are we in the West End? Well, the scene in the show, there's this moment where it's all about this love story that's connected, linked by the moon and the sea and the kind of the earthy events, the nature and that of the kind of the things that are bigger than ourselves all around it. However, that moon is then further linked by the actual journey, by the timeline of the moon landing, or the timeline of actual human space exploration, and then that goes through that arc. That third layer, because you've got the kind of love story, moon and the sea, you go, that's excellent. But the third layer gives it a real maturity that actually meant that, I think, crucially, you start thinking lots of different demographics of people is going to land, or that's what you kind of go, that's really big time.
Yeah, I remember being really surprised by that, because it's set in a fishing village in Cornwall and everyone is in the same costumes. It's sort of in the sort of timeless period, costume-wise. And then to actually see that little life is going on at the same time as this massive space exploration going on in America and across the world, really. It's that sort of telescope, isn't it? That tiny thing and that massive thing. It gives you such a huge perspective on the world and life and what's important in it, really.
Yeah. And I suppose what's the common thread of any musical that would be in our modern times, or that we considered, wow, this is great. And maybe actually they do have, let's call it, another level to it, which just takes it really far. But however, I guess within all of that, I suppose the word I would always come back to is energy, and the conveyance of positive energy, communicating that energy from people to people is quite a real thing. And with tangible difference, you're trying to create an environment where people can go that extra mile in wherever they are. And if they feel comfortable and happy and enriched and they feel looked out for, then that's what can happen. And that's what actually, again, in just 9 to 5 is a good example. It's funny, talk about 9 to 5 and Benjamin Button in the same breath, but I guess it's the same thing, because I remember through both processes, there's a huge amount of subtle shifts to dialogue, storytelling, just beats. Yes, the complexities, the overarching structures there, but I don't know, so much. It's just like, I mean, remember in 9 to 5, in the first preview, you were selling bum bags or something at the end.
Oh God, yes. Do you remember that? I had to wear this weird little bum bag. What was that about?
It was something about Violet and what happened to Violet in the future. And she invented this really, extraordinary thing that became a worldwide.
Invented a bum bag. I had totally forgotten about that. That didn't last very many performances, that bum bag.
No, but what can a producer do that useful? We went, well, I think we should probably evolve that storyline. So, which we did by the time we opened.
I don't think that got past one preview. I think that was gone after one night of a very confused audience going, why is she wearing a bum bag?
But the whole thing took off. But then they were like, right, we're going to do a couple of things tomorrow. One is we're going to relook at that bit.
Investigate the bum bag. Yeah.
That's why we had to pause Dolly at the end, on the video.
That's right. Yes, that's right. Because she said something about it.
It's because we couldn't change.
Yeah.
I think she said something about the bum bag and we couldn't do it. So it was like, hold on there. And we had to that was the way through it.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Oh my gosh. So with Benjamin Button being the best new musical at the Olivier Awards, officially fabulous. What do you think that will do for the show now? Because you've won that, are there new avenues open to you? Has that opened more doors?
What it really means, which is thrilling, is these two writers, their work has a chance to be seen in so many different territories. around the world. And that was one of the big hopes. One of the things that, again, about it is the universality of it all. You know, you could be anywhere in the world, anyone can access that story the way it's told.
Yeah.
It sort of connects with everybody. So therefore, it's like some shows, they might only be somewhat restricted to like Britain, like, I don't know, Only Fools and Horses the musical or something, for example. It's like it's very, very broad and wide, but it's a limited global audience potentially. So yeah, that's what I think it means, is that actually it just means the warmth and the interest from never ever had a show where theatre programmers and people who run theatres from Europe to Asia to North America to South America are all like, can we do it? And can we do it in our local language? And what's so nice about something like this is that we haven't got, because Fitzgerald is the short story is all kind of out of copyright. So it's all kind of, you can say yes, you can say to a school or a college, or you could have 50 people in it if you wanted to. You could have 5 Benjamin Buttons and 5 alone. You could have a school orchestra sat across. You don't have to tell it in this amazing acting muso way, which is so special. But, you know, the UK, US, Canada and Australia are probably the main places where you can get that talent pool. It's so nice. We've got people we've worked with over the years in Korea and Japan who just said, can we do it in local language and put half band, half performers? And you're like, we don't have to get that cleared, you know, with all the kind of estates and rights. It's like, we can just say, yes, you can. Yeah. You can do it however you want.
It's going to go global. I love that.
Yeah.
This lovely little show is going to go global. I'm so thrilled for you to have won that.
Oh, but also for the guys as writers as well, who are, you know, because I know, you know, just know, and you know how so many areas of our industry is hard, but particularly as the writers, it's like, you've just got to hang on. And what this weekend means is that will performances of Benjamin Button still be happening in 10 years from now all around different places? And the answer to that is like, yes. And you go, that's very cool.
It's great because, you know, I can see, like we said earlier, I can see Amdram's doing it. It's open to everybody. It's got a great ensemble, some lovely roles. Everybody has something to do. It's so accessible. Audiences love it. I just saw it on Saturday night. And before we went to watch it, I said, we might be going to see the last performance of this before it becomes the best new musical winner at the Olivier Awards. And I'm so pleased I was right. I'm so pleased. If you're feeling like you need a refresh, if you're feeling like you need some kind of creative nourishment, which musical would you turn to? Which musical feeds your soul?
Well, I'm trying to think, can I say it just because it's of now?
You can absolutely say it.
But it's true. For the last 6 years, you know, first seeing it, so the answer is The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, with a nod to Big Fish, which actually I think for me, from a career point of view, it's sort of one came before the other. But oh yeah, I mean, taking something to a kind of a more mainstream platform, that's what's been most thrilling about it, is because it's the amount of different people who have been so taken by it. It's really very, very lovely, and we don't take it for granted at all. The amount of not just people who've enjoyed it, but have left it, gone back home, rebooked again, told the people that they love that they're coming with them, and bringing them back, and then getting in there. And whether that's like a daughter who's 7 or parents who are late 70s, it's just, and maybe they're both biased, but as in different ages of people have received it. And that's, as a maker of theatre, that's more than you could ever dream of, really. That is what you want to do. You want to be able to find a work, join the journey, be useful in furthering that journey, feel like you're an important part of it, and deliver it to as many people as possible and have it universally received. So yeah, it's pretty enriching in that regard.
I love that. I've just realised I say I love that a lot in this podcast, but it's because I do. And I think with Benjamin Button, it is that, you know, it has a cross-generational appeal. I think it's so enjoyable. It's so clever. Seeing the amount of talent on that stage as well is phenomenal. It's so simply done. Yeah. The staging is beautiful. It's in this great environment where, you know, the theatre really suits it. And I honestly, my face was aching from smiling so much when you guys won the other day. It's just thrilling, absolutely thrilling. That was my final question, but you can tell me if you want, what is next for Richard Darbourne and ATG? What's your next project? You're not going to put that one to bed because obviously that's still got, like you say, the lives go on. But is there something else you're working on?
No, it just, the very broad church goes on, which is so great. So yes, actually there's the ongoing world, which is Button and the many different chapters to Benjamin's life. Last year we developed this amazing musical, I Should Be So Lucky, which is very different, with Debbie Isaac and Kylie Minogue and Stock Aitken Waterman, and it's just made lots of bangers. So there's that. We're still in the kind of, Button's realised its commercial world. Lucky's still on the journey, which is great. And on the same, and then we've got, it's not just me, obviously Adam Spears and Serene, but like there's still 2 different productions of Cabaret playing and taking our time. Mm-hmm. This summer, the next big one, I mean, talk about how it rolls on, but essentially our journey together on 9 to 5 has led us, which we hoped it would, to the life story of Dolly Parton.
Yes!
Which opens in July in Nashville.
Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. I didn't realise that was happening so soon.
Yeah, and they rang us up. They said, look, guys, I know you live in London, but Dolly's always, you guys made it all work, and if you want to produce it, then get on a plane. This was 2 years ago. And then she said, look, it's Dolly's birthday on Friday, and she wants to spend it talking to you 2 about her life story as a musical. We went, cool. And off we went. But part of that, because you know how these musicals take years, well, when it's Dolly Parton, she said, look, it's my 80th birthday in 2026, so let's get cracking.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Wow. That's incredible.
So that's motoring on pretty quick. Then we've got a small one in development. We did Casey and the Sunshine Band and all these disco tunes, and That's the Way Our Heart and Shake, Shake, Shake. And that's opening in September in the Charing Cross Theatre. So again, that's another kind of like small one that we're kind of trying to build. That's exciting. Same time, Pretty Woman opens in Brisbane and we'll play for a year out there. And there's a couple more that aren't sort of announced yet, a couple of development pieces, which it's pretty varied. My main focus is on actually trying to bring, for years, Europe and Germany and Austria, Switzerland, we've had theatres there, trying to kind of bring that market more closer together with the UK and the US. So actually trying to program those territories, which is a massively new challenge.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Because it's very seasonal, isn't it, in Europe? Things go on for like 6 months, like over the summer, and then they're done. And the long running thing, apart from Starlight Express in Bochum, doesn't seem to be as much of a thing in Europe.
Definitely. They're big theatres as well. So they're all like sort of 1,800 seaters, or they're around that level. And so therefore it's like there's a big place for big shows. So there's a lot. That's a big jigsaw puzzle. And I thought for me, I'm fascinated because actually I've always enjoyed the big shows, and it's a good challenge really to see if I can be helpful and bring that together. So I'm doing that a lot, which is again one. So Cats is tomorrow in Dusseldorf, which again is a UK show that's touring around Germany. Mrs. Doubtfire's coming in autumn.
Do you ever think, if you weren't friends with that little boy who had done King and I, would any of this even have happened? Isn't that a weird thing to think? Where would you be?
Yes, thankfully he's my oldest friend. But yeah, there's a lot of beats like that.
Yeah, there is in everybody's life, isn't it? I do love thinking like that, though. But Richard, thank you. It's been really fascinating to get a producer's perspective on this. It's such it's like the most important part of our industry, really, the people that take the risk and put things on and put all those cogs into place. And I think, especially as somebody whose job it is to go on stage and do it, a lot of that stuff is sort of alien to me. The workings behind the scenes, because it's not even like backstage. You're in a different building doing all that work behind the production, really. And it's fascinating to hear a little bit about how that all works and how that gets inspired by certain things and stuff. So thank you for enlightening me with all that. It's brilliant. Thank you. And thank you for being an awesome producer too, because I've always loved working for you.
Thank you very, very much for having me. It's been lovely just to sort of to chat and reminisce and to think, actually get some time to think about what it is that does it. So it's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Real privilege. Cheers, Richard.
Guys, excellent.
You're a legend. Thank you so much for listening today. This has been Talk Musicals to Me for the Bloop Network. My fabulous producer is Aaron Ware, and the music you heard is from the pen of the sublime Tom Self. If you get a moment, please subscribe or follow and rate the podcast by clicking the stars below on the podcast page. It takes about 2 seconds to do, and it will really help the podcast and its future life, and would make us massively, eternally, enormously grateful. In the meantime, another huge thanks for tuning in, and please do so again next time to see who will be next up to Talk Musicals to Me.